Hello, everybody. Thank you, David, or David. Is David or David? For inviting me to come here. It is always very refreshing to come back to the university, so I'm very happy to be with you and to be able to discuss. Before I move into the specific topic, I would like just to highlight what UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, does, and how we do it so that we know where this fits. UNCTAD is the United Nations focal point on trade and development and interrelated issues of finance, investment, technology, and sustainable development. So we take an integrated perspective to development, and in the United Nations system, it is considered to be more of the voice of developing countries. We are really looking at the development perspective. We were mostly focused until the Sustainable Development Goals framework on economic development, but now we know that everything is related, and we look at the economic, social, and environmental dimensions of development. And we do it through three main pillars, even if we say in UNCTAD as a joke that there are more than 3 pillars, because there is another pillar, which is me, Pilar, and there is another pillar. So we say these 2 pillars, we say that UNCTAD has 5 pillars. Well, in any case, the 3 pillars are first, research and analysis, which is one of the things I'm going to show to you is the flagship publications and many other publications on different topics of interest. Then what we call the intergovernmental machinery, that is really where the member states and delegates sit together to discuss the different topics and to try to get to agreements on policy issues, because our research and analysis is policy-oriented. And the third pillar is the what we call technical cooperation or assistance, working with developing countries for their capacity building. So basically we would summarize as think, debate, and act. So we are going to do more of what we have done on this topic for the moment, on the alignment of digitalization with environmental sustainability objectives. We have done more think and debate. We are still need to move to the act, even if now in the United Nations the situation is going to be complicated because there are some issues with budget that you may also have read about it, on cuts coming and or already taking place and these kind of things. But it is still, we try to do our best with what we have. So in our report on digital economy, normally we had focused more on the link there between digitalization and inclusive and equitable development, but we added this time the third dimension, which is environmental sustainability. We are looking here at 3 interconnected global challenges, but as you know, most of the global challenges that are becoming more problematic, but we know, and particularly because of technologies, they are more and more connected, so we need to have a broad perspective, really a global perspective of the issues. And then from the analysis that we have, we propose actions and policies that allow to shape a digitalization that works for people and the planet. So first, just to look at the general dimension, this question is basically, or we thought about working on this topic, because really the transformation that we are seeing in the digital economy are happening very fast and in a context of challenges to the planetary boundaries. So we look at the different situations coming on with the technologies. We are seeing higher speeds, we are seeing the problems, the issues with cloud computing. Also we see the concentration with the problems we have had with Amazon or Cloudflare this week and this kind of thing, the platformization, the exponential growth of data, or that we are moving more and more to the virtual world. At the same time, this is confronted with planetary boundaries that are breached, When we did the report, we started to work in the report in 2022, more or less. There was not much analysis on the impacts of digitalization on the environment. Actually, if you think the popularization of ChatGPT came in 2022, and there has been much more analysis over the past, or even attention to the question of environmental sustainability of AI over the past year or so. But we already recorded that the world 6 of the 9 planetary limits breached. And now my understanding is that we have breached the 7th. And this is also confronted with development and digital divide. For example, still in the world, there are 2.6 billion people offline. So the estimations of the emissions from the ICT sector or the digital sector, they vary quite a lot, because we will see that there are a number of problems in measurement, but they are between 1.5% and 3.2%, which are not or quite close to the transport sector in terms of aviation and boats and maritime transport. And the device that we see, you have some example there on the divide of internet, where developed countries or developed economies have almost 5 times the speed than least developed countries. Or in the use of internet, we can see also a huge divide where 90% of the people in developed countries use internet compared to 36% in the LDCs. The environmental impacts are normally generated along the whole life cycle of digitalization, which is the production stage, the use stage, and the end of life. We are focusing here on production and end of life, but on a question mark, because we will talk about the last stage to become the first stage in terms of circularity. And we look more to direct effects, because these are the ones that can be measured. Indirect effects are very difficult to measure. So direct effects would be the environmental footprint of digitalization or of ICTs. It comes in the form of the depletion of natural resources, the use of energy, the use of water, the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, or the pollution. And what we are saying here also is that there are indirect effects from the use of digital tools on fighting climate change, but the net effect, in our opinion, is almost impossible to calculate. What we are trying to say is that already it is important to reduce the impacts, the negative impacts. So this is already a positive result. Determining the overall footprint is very difficult, because definitions of the sectors are different. There is a lack of data, particularly in the states that we will not see, but it is important that many of the big tech companies are very opaque in the impacts on the environment, in terms of the electricity they consume, in terms of the water they use, and it's really very complicated to do. There are not standard reporting standardized reporting standards for that. And the definitions of the life cycle stages vary, and all these kind of things, the assumptions of the models. But still, what is the consensus is that the impact is increasing, and it's important. So it is quite good that we are looking at these things, and it is important to look at ways to address these impacts. And the clear conclusion is that the production phase is the most polluting, and the life cycle assessments need to be multi-criteria, looking at all the impacts, mineral and depletion of the metals, the emissions, the use of resources, water, energy, impacts on biodiversity, or the quality of air. From the perspective of UNCTAD and developing countries, the problems for developing countries and the development perspective, for us, and I have focused here mostly on the production phase and on the waste, what happens with the waste, is that there is an unequal ecological exchange. And it implies that there is a limitation for the gains from development. If we look at development gaps, environmental gaps, and digital gaps, they are all very related. There are unequal impacts from climate change in different countries, and normally the developing countries are the ones suffering the most, and also the vulnerable populations are the ones that suffer the greatest losses from extreme weather. And there are also negative impacts from, on one side, the production of devices coming, as we will see, from the extraction of resources, and the waste generated that normally affect the regions that are farther from the consuming or the using places. And also these countries, developing countries, are in general the ones that are least able to use digital tools to harness these technologies to mitigate the impacts on the environment. So what we really go to is that this device, in terms of development, environment, and digitalization, are interrelated, and they need to be addressed holistically. If we move off the production stage, is looking at the trends in digitalization that are leading to increased material consumption. So if we think about digitalization, there are words that we can think about: virtual, in the cloud, that give an idea of an ethereal thing that is dematerialized. But this is not the reality. The reality is that the promise of digitalization to dematerialize the society or the world still has not materialized. We see that the global material footprint has quadrupled since 1970 and may rise further to 60% until 2060, and this is a huge concern globally. One example that you have here, I have to say that this was not an easy analysis, because most of the footprint in terms of materials now is focusing on the materials used for the energy transition. That is the bad news in one way, but the good news is that, as we will see, most of the materials or the critical minerals used for the energy transition are also used for the electronics. For what we have here, it is very intensive on materials, very common. So we see also that the devices are increasing in complexity. There is more elements from the periodic table use, and we see the example of the telephones. In 1960, it was 10 elements that were used in a telephone. Then in 1990, it increased to 27, and it was 63 in 2021. Just to show to you, you will see, of course, you can always go to the report, but the idea is what some of geologists and engineers are saying, that we are moving, in this case, from a world based on fossil fuels to a world based on the periodic table. Okay. So this complexity also implies that in many cases the materials are in very small quantities, but the point is that they are very mixed, blended, and it creates problems also for recycling. The technologies of recycling are not yet very developed. And what we are going to focus, the electronics, they rely strongly on minerals and metals, plastics, glass, and ceramics. In this report and in what I'm going to present, we look more on minerals and metals, because the others are more general for developed and developing countries, but in the case of minerals and metals, production and exports are very concentrated in developing countries. And the challenge is that there is competition between digital and low carbon technologies that compete for the same minerals. And the estimations on the expectations of demand to increase are huge. Here we did, in order to show to you that that the same kind of minerals are used for digital technologies and for the energy transition or the low carbon transition, we look at this, the list compiled for countries on critical minerals, and we found that the only one that is, you can see there, is potassium. It's the only one that is not in the digital technologies. We opted for the idea of calling them more transition minerals in order to include low carbon and digital transition. And also because we see that critical is more of a political term, and it is a very relative term because different countries define criticality in a different way. So for them, and it depends, depending on the trade and production structure, criticality varies. So we look at many different dynamics of digitalization, and we see in this kind of cycle that because of exponential growth in internet and data traffic, and they are all interrelated, there is also greater consumption of digital devices and hardware, besides the increased building of ICT and data infrastructure, and computing power is continuously evolving, and we have better mobile technologies, which really this leads to increased demand for minerals and metals and other materials. So in this, you can see much more in the report, but we saw a number of trends in the relation to the different technologies and to the different stages of the digitalization cycle and the data value chain. There is, we can see on the left that there is a significant increase in the per capita devices in developed countries. And we can see, for example, compare North America with the Middle East. And we can see that in 2023, the average devices was 13.4 in North America, which is mostly the United States. And in Middle East and Africa, it was 1.5. So the devices are clear, but also the increases in the consumption are clear. And on the right, we can see the mobile data traffic that is expected to double, more than double within the next 5 years. And here the hires are seen in Northeast Asia. In this case, China plays a strong role. We can see also, for example, from the move to the different, now we can talk more about 4G and 5G, but 5G also means more and more data. And it means, for example, that the people with 4G will move to 5G, and it means changing the devices. So it will be an impact on the environment, an impact on waste. And also, we are seeing significant increase in Internet of Things devices that really are expected to surge over from now to 2029. Then, because of this increase in demand, there is a supply response that is pushing the mining frontier. These the technologies, both digital and low carbon, require more and more amounts of raw materials that lead to increased exploration. We can see the numbers there on the budgets on exploration, increasing 34% in 2021 and 16% in 2022. But at the same time, because we are moving ahead on the mining production, the productivity of the mines decreases, which means that there are declining ore grades. Even if there is more mine development, they are less efficient, and there is a time lag in availability. So what we really need to do is to rethink the models or the modes of production and consumption, because there are potential limits to mineral supply, the planet is finite, and we have to think in terms of intergenerational equity. If we waste all the minerals, there will be nothing left for those coming later. And the two main frontiers that are coming now is the space, because companies are looking already, are going to the moon, going to meteorites, and to get the minerals, and also the deep seas. Both of these are very, very controversial in the sense that they are not regulated yet, and both of those are global commons, in the sense that they belong to all of us. But what is happening now is that it is just the big companies that can go there and spend the huge resources that are needed to exploit these frontiers. So in the end, again, leads to increased inequality. What we did also is to do a classification of economies as exporters or importers of transition minerals and by level of development. So we can see the different countries. We can see on the bottom left that is mainly developing countries which are exporters of minerals, even if there are a couple of developed countries that are also important producers and exporters of mineral, which is Australia and Canada. Then we have on the bottom, on the upper part right, developed countries that are mainly importers of minerals, and only a developing country that is mainly importer, and China that is both important importer and exporter. China now, it is, we all know that it is a particular country that is to be analyzed in a specific way. But in the case of critical minerals, it plays really a key role. And the point here is again that we have always talked about dependency of minerals, and in terms of development, of developing countries depending on the exports of minerals. And they had particular problems that they had to address, in the sense of that they were exporting the raw materials and the value addition was taking place outside. Now, there is also a very important issue on countries dependent on imports of minerals, because they need for the energy and for the digital transition. And it is developed countries mostly that they are looking to these policies to ensure that they have the supply of these minerals. So we see, even if it is always, it has always been geopolitical issues, geopolitical problems are now even exacerbating the environmental footprint of digitalization. There is a high geographic concentration of mineral and metal reserves, extraction and processing, and we can see examples there. For example, in cobalt, the key country is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, that has 3/4 of the total production. Australia and Chile product or export, extract, 72% of the lithium, even if the key area for the lithium in terms of research is what is called the lithium triangle in Latin America, which is Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. And then, for example, another example is manganese. Only 2 countries in Africa have 60%. But a key issue also is that China is leading the processing. China, over the last 2 decades, has been investing and doing industrial policy for controlling mining sectors in developing countries, but also for processing in China, because basically also this is related to the delocalization policies that led to China to be a manufacturing center, because really what China was doing was to have this refining or processing next to the manufacturing areas. And But the result of all this and all this situation with increased demand is that many developed countries are really putting priority in securing the minerals, that it is a strategic policy, and they are doing industrial policies to ensure that they have this access, but they are also doing partnerships in ways, and what is important, and we will see, is that these partnerships are done in mutual benefits of the importing and the exporting country, but this is also leading to the potential of hoarding overcapacity in production and less efficiency, which goes against the environment. It means more environmental footprint. So really, the idea is that the extractive dynamics of the past should be reversed, in the sense that, yes, there are opportunities for developing countries to leverage this increasing mineral demand for their development purposes, and there is some scope or more scope for diversification along the value chain and for structural transformation, but the traditional or the conventional dynamics still have been of developing countries being engaged in the low value added activities of the ICT value chain, which meant probably increasing commodity dependence, unequal ecological exchange, and more environmental and social concerns from mining. And there is a need really to address this trade and rent distribution imbalances. Developing countries can go for more regional cooperation in the different negotiations, and there is a need for more international cooperation for sustainable sourcing, for balancing the needs of different stakeholders, or for working with ethical mineral supply chains. And I have to say that in this case, though focusing on what is called critical energy transition minerals, the Secretary General of the UN created a panel last year that was already going in this direction of looking at the different impacts on a broad perspective with the different organizations of the UN, looking at economic aspects, human rights aspects, environmental aspects, and it is being implemented now. So overall, the response to increasing mineral demand could be, on the production side, increasing the extraction or the primary supply, or increasing secondary supply through recycling and resource recovery, that we will discuss more, but is already to introduce that is part of the circular economy. And also related to production would be technological progress for sustainable materials, for substitute materials, for efficiency in the resource use, or for methodologies or technologies to recycle. And on the consumption side also, there is the possibility to reduce excessive demand. So this implies that we need to rethink and move from linear production, that means extract, make, use, and waste, to circular economy logics that is based on the principles of reducing, reusing, and recycling. So this is the idea now to move to, we are skipping the use stage, which is mostly the data centers and the artificial intelligence, and is probably what you have seen most in the news. And we are talking about the end of cycle, but it is a question mark really, because if we think with a circular digital economy logic, it means that it would be the beginning of a new cycle. So we are looking at what is digitalization-related waste and the circular economy. We have called it digitalization-related waste because, again, here there is a huge problem of measurement, because most of the statistics in this context, they are from the UNITAR e-waste statistics, and e-waste, which is confused, is called electronic waste, but it is not only electronic waste, it's electric and electronic waste. So they have like 6 categories of what they do in the statistics. So we have tried to take the categories that would be more specifically electronic, and we are taking screens, monitor, and small IT equipment. If one important thing on this digitalization-related waste is that it has a dual nature, in the sense that it is hazardous material, it is toxic, and it needs to be treated in a particular way that is mostly regulated by the Basel Convention on mostly focusing on trade, on the movement of hazardous materials, but it also has valuable parts that if they are recovered, they can be really, they have value for the economy. So we look at the different trends in the statistics that we have, and we see that there are significant regional disparities that are also mirroring digital divides. So those countries that are consuming more, that are more digitally developed, are the ones generating more digitalization-related waste. So between 2010 and 2022, in tens of million tons, it increased by 30% from 80.1 to 10.5, and the waste per capita in developed economies was 3.225 in developed economies and 0.9 in developing economies, but 0.2 in least developed countries. Also, there is a problem of collections that is really, globally, is only 1/4 of all, which is very low. Even in developed economies, does not get to even half of the of the overall waste that is collected, and is very low in developing economies. The challenges that these developing economies suffer is that they have problems, limited recording in documenting of waste flows, lack of formal collection system. Most of this collection and the treatment takes place in informal settings. Only 1 in 4 have relevant waste management legislation, and there is insufficient collection and recycling infrastructure. The reasons for this growth of digitalization-related waste is different drivers that are increasing consumption that we have talked. One issue is the lifetime of the lifespan of the devices, that normally they are quite short. The declining prices of the electronics, the low awareness of consumers about the waste, the implication of this waste, that the model is mainly linear, and also that there are very limited repair options. We all know about the issue of program obsolescence. Even if many try to deny it, it is evident, and we all have in the hands, and we know how our device works. So they relate, for example, this question of phasing out software support. You may have also read recently that Microsoft was stopping support to Windows 10, and it was really going to be to affect many devices. Or we may also have something to do with rapid changing models and the change in demand. And this is evolving in the sense that in some countries it is being banned, like here in France or in Quebec in Canada. And the civil society plays a very important role in here, because they are really pushing for laws against this planned obsolescence, asking for minimum durability criteria, for labeling on the lifetime, for more accessible and affordable repairs, or legislation on the right to repair, and monitoring trends and educating the consumers on this situation. When we think about the digital economy, many people think directly about recycling. Recycling is really the last one, the last option. We should start with the part on reducing, rethinking, repairing, then move to the reuse with the repurposing, remanufacturing, and recycling and recovering would be really in our last options. It should be very clear on that, on the hierarchy. Also, the sustainability is a kind of a task for all of us. It doesn't matter where we are in the production, in the consumption. So as consumers, we also need to rethink a number of things, and particularly consumers in developed countries. There is a need to rethink this overconsumption that happens if we could see the comparison between the different ownership of devices. And if rethinking appropriately, it can happen that moderating consumption is one way forward. There is an aim to deliver human well-being with planetary boundaries, which means that because of this overconsumption, most of the task is in high-income countries, while there are still digital devices in developing countries. And they still need digitalization. So we have borrowed the donut illustration to show that below the social floor, it is really an insufficient digitalization. These countries being there should increase the digitalization, should move towards the green part of sustainable digitalization. But above the environmental ceiling, which is mostly where we are in developed countries, we should move down towards the sustainable digitalization. So we should maybe think in keeping our devices for longer, in more repairing, in more remanufacturing, and all these kind of things. So, and this is important, this question also was raised when we presented to developing countries, because they say, but if you are telling moderate consumption, they are taking like we are telling them. No, still, those underdeveloped countries, they can move forward in digitalization. So those that are not sufficiently connected can digitalize for development. So on the waste collection, even if I have explained there, it is important also to talk about the situation of unequal ecological exchange, because those countries, developed countries, that are producing, generating the most digitalization-related waste, they export the waste to developing countries. But what happens, and we will see here in the map, what happens is that, for example, one of the parts that is South Asia is a destination for waste, and also Western Africa. Countries like Ghana and Nigeria are very well known for that. So we can see, for example, from Europe is the red part, that is really the uncontrolled waste. What happens very often, even if it is regulated, the trade of used electronic material is a kind of disguise. It is waste, but they call it as used electronic material. And when it comes to the country, it is almost waste, and these destination countries have much less capacity for the treatment and for the recycling and for dealing with this waste. So we have the red part that it would be really the problematic part that goes to developing countries, and it goes from the north to the south. There is also increasing intra-regional flows, but also it is important to look at the blue part, which is the printed circuit board waste, because these are the higher value parts of the waste, but there are only about 7 or 8 facilities in the world that are normally in developed countries, which means that the higher value parts of the recycling go back to the developed countries. It is not, the value doesn't stay in the developing countries. So again, it's a problem of unequal ecological exchange. So clearly, the conclusion that we come here in the sense is that a digital economy that is circular by design from the beginning can foster environmental sustainability. We have done here the representation with the different stages in a linear way that would go generally as normally has been the case, but then converting it in circular. So the consumer, once it is there, can repair, can share or use it for a longer life, or then can be redistribution and reuse, going back to the distribution stage, or remanufacturing, refurbishing, going back to the assembly part. And if there is recycling and urban mining and recovery of resource, it goes to the primary processing. So here would be, again, as I mentioned before, we have the primary supply on the left, that is really the extraction, and the secondary supply that would be in the part of recycling and the resource recovery. But also, every stage of the manufacturing can be circular. There can be circular mining, there can be circular processing, or circular manufacturing in the sense of, so really is to move to a circular logic. And here where we see, of course, is with the circularity principles of all the R's that you can think, because I even found an article that was talking about 60-something R's. Here we highlight reduce, refuse, reuse, repair, and recycle. And for us also was to look at the development perspective in the sense that people say, yeah, we move to circularity, but where is the development there? So we can find value addition and job creation by moving to these new activities. Also, repair, refurbishing, and second-hand markets may help in addressing the digital divides because of the affordability of these devices and the sustainable practice. Okay, then also it leads to sustainable practices to reduce resource use and waste. And what we recommend, for example, if we know that there are facilities for the high value treatment only in developed countries, maybe developing countries can join together at a regional level and have a regional plan for keeping the value in their area. So if we move to what are the policy actions that can come from the discussion, we really look at the actions that really lead to an environmental sustainable digitalization that works for inclusive development. So we need really to have a new policy mindset for addressing key challenges. We need innovative approaches in terms of new business models and strategies to really maximize the positive impacts of digitalization and minimizing the negatives for reducing consumption, to optimize scarce resource without harming the future generations, to leverage digitalization-related ways for opportunities for development and for recovering resources, and also to cut carbon emissions. This shift towards the circular economy leads or helps inclusive and environmentally sustainable development through the building of adaptive and resilient infrastructure using low carbon technologies or energies. Here I would like to say something which is also very important. When we talk about moving from fossil fuels to renewable energy, it is important to know that it should be a substitution, not additional. And many big tech companies are saying how good we are that we are using renewable energy. It is not really the case. If they are additioning this energy, it is not really a substitution. And actually what we have seen in many cases now is that big tech companies are moving, even going back to more fossil fuels because of AI, and also even moving to nuclear energy and this kind of thing. And then there is a need to reduce the wasteful use and overconsumption, prioritizing the activities of the circular economy, recovering resources, and this allows to boost opportunities through economic activities, business growth, and job creation. It is key that we start from the design stage, in this case, that encouraging efficiency, but it is not enough, and also maximize the value of the resources recover. From the perspective of developing countries, it is important to address this double bind that I mentioned in terms of unequal ecological exchange, because they suffer the brunt of the cost of digitalization in terms of the raw material extraction, not only in economic terms because they are in the low value addition parts of the value chain, but also in terms of the impacts on climate and social climates. They also suffer more impacts from digitalization-related waste. They suffer more vulnerability from climate impacts and the digital divides. But developed countries are really capturing most of the benefits. So a key principle to apply, like in climate change, is the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities that takes into account historical contributions to the problems apart from the particular situations and needs and development needs of the countries. This means that digitally developed countries should take the main responsibility towards shifting to an inclusive and sustainable digital future. And also they need to provide developing countries with support, because they really need to build the capacities to harness digitalization in an environmentally sustainable manner. So the policy approach to rethink these consumption and production partners should be comprehensive and collaborative. It should be mostly, I mean, even if and I'm very sympathetic with issues on the growth and post-growth and these kind of things, in the UN, this language doesn't yet go ahead or go forward, but the main context we have been able to put it there is the Sustainable Development Goal 12, which is responsible consumption and production. And in this frame, these argumentations work quite well. So the response needs to be multi-stakeholder. This is a joint responsibility and we all have to play our role. It has to be consumers and users, the private sector, policymakers and civil society. And to detail something there on these different stakeholders, on the side of consumers and users, what we can do is to move to more sustainable digital lifestyles and habits, to have more interest and awareness on the impacts of digitalization in terms of the environment and socioeconomic impacts, to embrace sufficiency and sobriety practices, reduce overconsumption, reuse, repair, recycle, and therefore the ultimate objective is to minimize disposal. From the point of view of businesses, what they can do is to move to new business models that allow for sustainability and circularity, and it means starting with the design with sustainability and circularity in mind. From the point of view of mining and electronics manufacturing, to have responsible and sustainable practices, work on the durability of the products, also the practice of product as a service, modularity, repairability, transparency and accountability, and also using renewable energy and recycled materials, but as I mentioned, with taking in mind what is the implication of using renewable energy. And in this case, they can have a potential for development because they create opportunities for value creation from recovered resources, from increased economic activity, and from the generation of employment. Policymakers also, again, they need to provide conditions for consumers and businesses to play their role. And the preconditions would be to work to enhance understanding of the environmental and socioeconomic impacts of digitalization. We need to progress in terms of measurement. We need to do more research. We need to understand more. And to work on the transparency of the information needed, and to increase the awareness of the impacts. The policy options are different. You have more details in the report, but it would be to provide the standards and regulation for measuring, for reporting the impact, for the management of waste, including extended producer responsibility, for circularity, sustainability, and responsibility of production. Working in terms of traceability of the products, in the stage of minerals is diversification and value addition strategies to work on the fair distribution of the mineral proceeds in terms of, it can be of contract negotiations with the mining companies or the taxation. Also working for, to progress on technology, industrial and infrastructural policies. It is important to lead by example, so public procurement of electronics should mean public procurement of sustainable electronics, regulate against program obsolescence and for the right to repair, also counter or ban greenwashing and regulate advertising. And from the perspective of UNCTAD, it is important to work to prevent the international flows of digitalization-related waste. And on this, it's very important to ensure monitoring and enforcement of the different policies. And the role of civil society, I already mentioned to you, but they are very important for calling attention to issues of concern, to raise awareness, and demanding policy changes in terms of the impacts in the environment and on human rights of mining, for example, working conditions in all the stages of the value chain, impacts of data centers, or on the right to repair. The second dimension of the policy approach is that it has to be integrated. It has to look at, as I mentioned in the beginning, we need to look at socioeconomic development and environmental and digitalization devices together because they are interrelated and they need to be addressed in an integrated systemic way. And this implies that there is a need to integrate more environmental sustainability and digital development in national development strategies. It has to be holistic. Here I repeat the figure of the value chain, but it is really to stress the fact that there is a need to look at all the impacts in terms of all the, as I mentioned, on natural resources, on water, on electricity, energy, and pollution, and over the whole life cycle of digitalization. And it is very important to think that it is all digitalization issues and environmental issues are cross-sectional. If they are connected, it is also, there is also a need to look at them as a cross-sectional issue with where capacities are needed in diverse and connected perspective disciplines, and it includes aspects related to technology, socioeconomic development, environment and climate change, human rights, ethics, and many more you can think about. And the policy approach has to be multilateral. We have to think that I think in general, in many of the contexts that we are talking at global level, as I mentioned from the beginning, we have global challenges that have global reach, that are interconnected, and we need to address them in a global manner. But certainly, we need to think in new ways of governing. Probably a possibility is a multi-layer way of governing, but there will always need to be multilateral in the sense that laws and regulations are established by governments. So they need to really address them at a multilateral level, even if it is multi-stakeholder, as I mean, with connections with all the main stakeholders. So we have global interconnected challenges that need to be addressed globally, and international and regional cooperation is very important. There is a need to agree on standards. There is a need of international trade and investment regimes that support these objectives. The Basel Convention on Waste Flows needs to be more strongly enforced and ensure that there is compliance. It is important to consider the transfer of extended producer responsibility across borders, because if this is a national regulation only, and we stop the EPR at the border, it means that the developing country that is receiving the waste is not going to have the necessary resources for this treatment of the waste. It is also important to look at data governance issues, particularly in this case we haven't talked on that, but it's related to the question of where the data centers are located and where the impacts, the environmental impacts are more related. And also look at taxation and competition policies, which are very related to the huge concentration of power in big tech. And also, as I mentioned, many developing countries don't have the capacity to address these issues, and there is a need to support them in this connection. So the link, as I mentioned, when we started, there was not so much discussion or so much research on this connection between digitalization and environment, but we have seen that there is more and more attention to this, and we saw this happening in the last September at the Summit for the Future that approved the Global Digital Compact, and we can see that member states agreed in the, I will read there, we commit by 2030 to promote sustainability across the life cycle of digital technologies, including concept-specific measures to increase resource efficiency and to conserve and sustainably use natural resources, and that aim to ensure that digital infrastructure and equipment are sustainable designed to address environmental challenges in the context of sustainable development and efforts to eradicate poverty. So this is quite an advance in that sense. We need to see also how it materializes. We have also seen, for example, there was the AI Summit, Global AI Summit in Paris in February, I believe, here, and they also created the Global AI Sustainability Coalition or something like that. And as at the last two COPs, there has also been some inclusion of digital days and the digital dimension. So it is good that it is, this is happening, but there is a long way to go. In any case, I want to leave you with a positive conclusion with the sentence of the Secretary General that we have there in the foreword of the report that says, together we can harness the benefits of digitalization while closing the digital divide and protecting our planet. Thank you.